Welcome back to the Gin's Treasure. Today we are gonna do a new style of wrap that I have discovered / invented. It's just kind of a fusion actually of the two different styles of wraps that I've shown you in the past. To do this wrap, we're gonna use our beautiful moonstone, and I forget what type of moonstone. There's like a specific, it's like a fusion of like a moonstone and a sunstone, I think. Not really sure. Anyways, I got it at one of the crystal shops local to me. The name of the shop is A Stone's Throw in Katati, and really cool crystal shop. I don't know if you're a Northern Californian in the Sonoma County area. Recommend checking out that shop if you are. And for the wire, we're gonna use this 20 gauge coated copper wire that's pure silver. We're gonna use quite a bit of it. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and just pull out, let's see, about an arm's length. And we'll see, I'll be able to eyeball it and know for sure if that's gonna be enough. It looks like that'll be enough. So we'll clip it there. Oh, actually, pinch it down so that when I clip it, this is a little technique for when you're working with the spools, is to clip here. As you can see, my finger is pinching down. And if I were to remove my finger, this tip here, the coil would just completely unwind. So I keep that pinched down, and then I can really easy weave that through there so it's locked into place. That spool's not coming undone. And this is some, just simple zero wire, pretty nice quality. And then, so once I have, this is like folded in half, an arm's length, and I'm actually gonna fold it once more too. So tip to tip, right? And then pinch to that loop, that's the midway. So now I've created, once I clip these, clip, 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 and now I have more or less 4 even in length 20 gauge coated copper wires. And so I'll set those down for now, and then I'm gonna use some 24 gauge from this spool of silver plated copper. I'll pull out quite a bit, maybe like an entire wingspan. And what I mean by wingspan is, like, if I were to put both my hands, well, imagine that my pinkies, well, hold on, let me clip this before I try to explain that. So it's the same thing. You see how I tuck that in the little threshold, and then that way it's caught and locked and safe for me to clip that, and the spool doesn't unwind. Now back to the wingspan, what I meant is that, like, if I were to imagine this is my head here, and then these are my pinkies are my arms, like entire wingspan is fully stretched out that way, and then it would be like length here all the way to my other hand. That's the full wingspan. Now we're gonna take this 24 gauge wire, kiss it tip to tip, zip, and pull all the way down till we get that loop at the other end. And then we're just gonna take all 4 of these 20 gauge wires and carefully thread them all through. Make sure they all go through the loop, and then we're just gonna kind of eyeball and estimate about halfway from the midpoint here. So it's now, that loop is the halfway of this 24 gauge wire, and then we're just gonna hook it right on what appears to be about halfway there. We don't have to get it precise. And then what we're gonna do is separate the two sides. So I pull, one side goes out here, and the other side, you can see, comes this way. And then we'll just pinch that down right on the middle, making sure, if you look closely, you can see all four of those 20 gauge wires are straight and parallel to each other. None of them are crisscrossed and they're not mangled. It's nice and neat and parallel. And we're gonna pinch down and carefully, you can see I kind of undid it already. So if that happens, that's fine. You just wanna correct it. And we're gonna carefully coil a few lengths and making sure not to coil too tight, because if you coil tight and pull tight on these coils, those four wires will bunch together like that. So you want to avoid that. You want to make sure that they remain nice and flat and parallel. And then we're just gonna carefully coil along. And if you notice, oh, sorry, didn't realize I was off camera. If you notice, they're just naturally going to want to twist up. You just gotta do your best to get them to resist that as you get your first few coils. And then once you get your first few coils down, then you can grab your flat needle nose pliers. So you see how it's a flat. We're just gonna pinch down on the coils to get a better grip, and the flatness of those flat needle nose pliers helps keep and maintain the flatness and parallel of these four 20 gauge wires as we continue to produce more coils very carefully. We also want to make sure that our coils stay nice and straight. And then I'll give you an example of what not to do, just real quick. So you see how, if you look closely, oops, the coil was going outwards this way, and then that last one went inwards this way. So you want to make sure that does not happen. If it does, the only thing you can do is just uncoil it and then recoil it correctly. So as you can see, I'm going really slow and delicately and carefully, and these coils are just naturally wanting to bunch up, and you just have to take a pause every now and then and just kind of massage them out here so that they're flat, and then work that flatness and parallelness towards inwards. And then also you can release your grip from the pliers and then scoot it over and then smoosh down right on the edge there. And now you have it staying nice and flat on the inside, and you can continue to coil further onwards. And we're just coiling along, and then after I get a good amount of coils, I can give you a little preview of what the next step will be. Actually, well, I guess we'll be starting the next step, but I can show you kind of how the design will work out as far as designing the entire pendant frame. So I'll have to coil a little bit more, I would say. And the other thing too that's important is to keep in mind that all of these coils here have eaten up this length of wire. So if I were to take this and pull out, you're gonna expect to see that the top wire is gonna be longer than, oh, look at that, it's longer. And it's longer because this wire, the shorter wire, its length has been eaten up by all these coils. So that checks out, that makes sense. And in fact, we'll go ahead and switch it around. So instead of coiling outwards that way, well, here, I'll show you. It was upside down like this, right? So what we were watching was all the coils starting from here in the middle, working outwards. So we just, boop, tilt that upside down, pull that one out. That one is the one that's out of the way. And then we can start working on eating up the length of this wire by doing more coils going outwards this way. So we'll pinch our pliers down there and then continue to coil along. A few more coils, and then once I get a few more coils out, I can go ahead and just push those in, tuck them in nice and tight, and then release my grip on the pliers, and then realign it and pinch down, and then continue to do more coils. And then once I have enough coils, and the idea is how to know if you have enough coils. It's going to depend on the size and shape of your stone. The idea is that what I want to produce is, and we'll have to shape that wire a little bit too to help give us an idea of where we're at. Yeah, like this. So I'm thinking that with this beautiful swish or direction of this sway inside the stone, we're gonna want the frame wire to go in that same direction. So the idea is, as you can see, I'm kind of building the frame and it's uneven. So it's coming out much longer up top on the left side, whereas on the right side, it's still kind of towards the base of the crystal. And the idea is, I'll show you now, we're gonna split these four apart and into divide it by two. So you could see, I didn't intend to bend these ones. You don't really need to bend those, but you do bend these ones outwards, almost even at like a 90-degree angle. It doesn't have to quite be a 90-degree angle, but you could see how we're going up and straight, and these continue to go straight, whereas these ones bend outwards. And then to complete the symmetry, we're gonna spin it around to the other side and then pinch and split those, making sure that it's the two far left are the ones that are getting bent. And then now we can start to build the frame. So what I'll do is I'll put the stone back in here and kind of shape it to the crystal. And the idea, here, let me put the stone down and kind of bend the wire, bend the frame to make it more what we need it to be. And the idea is that these two are actually going to come across and create a kind of a cradle. They're going to create a cradle for the bottom. So you see how it's kind of holding that in place. Now you can imagine, instead of, if it were not my fingers holding this in place in the back, instead it would be these two wires that are the wires that are bent. So like, for example, so these two are bending around the front of the wire, and then when we turn this frame around, you can see it's these two wires are going to bend to cradle around the back side. And we want it to have a bit of an angle. So when we look at the back side, you can see, hold on, was that right? Yes, okay. So I panicked for a second because I thought that maybe this line is kind of the angle that we're going with. So in which case, I would probably want to coil around just these two wires. So let's get a closer look at what I mean. So these two wires, I want to coil these two wires and building up those coils so that when this wire comes across and meets these two, it's going to be at more or less the same angle that the stone has created with this line coming through. So you can see that's like more lined up. Looks like I kind of didn't quite get the job done there, but that's okay. It's more necessary that the stone is going to be secured, so I'd rather have it be down more here as opposed to lining up up here so that it matches the angle of this line coming through. So that's okay. But if I wanted to, what I would do is continue to wrap this 24 gauge around these two frames, or frame wires, the 20 gauge wires, in order to allow, at some point, what I'm gonna do is bring these two that are coming across this way, gonna bend an angle, and in fact, I'll just show you now. So with my fingers, pinch and bend carefully, so now we can see that these four are all going to be lined up. And then I'll just continue to coil up here until the point where I can link all four of them together. So that's what we'll do now. And I will say it's, for me, it's more helpful to get a few coils done with just my fingers. And then once I have a few coils completed here, then I take my flat needle nose pliers, kind of pinch that down so that it's stamped and flat. And then I can continue to do more coils using the needle nose pliers. Careful not to get caught on these guys. Not yet anyway, as I continue to do more coils. And I also want to pay attention to these two wires. So if you look closely, you see how this bottom wire crosses over to become the top up here. So we want to avoid that, make sure that they stay nice and flat and parallel. So I'll pinch down with the pliers and then continue carefully to coil along more. And then look at that, that's kind of lining up with where this bend is that I created, and we're about ready to join all four of these together. So that's what we'll do next. Go ahead and wrap it around all four of them. And then we also want to be very careful, because at this point, we want to make sure we're studying that. So for example, this wire, this 20 gauge wire that my pliers are touching is the bottom one, right? So we want to make sure that that is a continuous thing, that it remains the bottom, or in fact, the middle if we're counting these two down here. And then this top one remains the top one. We don't want them to get crossed, because that is going to be, once the pendant is, or the frame is completed, that is going to be something that will show rather obvious. And we don't want, if we do make any mistakes, we certainly don't want our mistakes to be obvious ones. So in order to maintain these four, because they're pretty stubborn about getting switched up, so I'm going to pinch here on my pliers, and then carefully I'll be weaving, working around my entire hand to bring this wire around and continue those coils. It seems a bit more like it's the difficult way to do things, but ultimately it's going to be a lot more smooth. So you can see how I'm kind of just getting into the flow of it, even though I have to work around my whole hand here. It's the smoother method. And then I'll just kind of, what I do is pinch down on these four, slide, and you see how that pushes all those together. And then now I can use my pliers to pinch down on that coiled portion, and then I'm free to more easily now coil along all four instead of having to work around my hand. And then I also want to look closely and make sure, okay, so there's these two, and that checks out that they're not getting crossed over. You definitely don't want them to get crossed and then coil that up, because that just creates a mess. So then we realign and then continue to coil onwards. And then before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm gonna wanna switch up and repeat the same process on the other side, right? So now we can see I'll put the stone back in to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like, right? So we see there's those two wires, the two 20 gauge wires have like a nice sway to go across up the front of the cradle. And then now I'm gonna work on the back. So for this one, it'll be the same thing where the sway, except for on that side, the sway goes upwards, but in this one, because it's the reverse, the sway goes downwards. And then we're gonna pinch down with our fingers and then carefully bend those wires up to create that sway. And then we'll also wanna make sure that we are able to put our stone in place, and that as we build the frame, it's not gonna be, we're not shrinking the frame to be so small that it won't even be able to fit the stone in. We wanna make sure, that's rule number one, is make sure that when you build your wire frame, that the stone still fits in there. All right, and we're good to start coiling this new set of 4 here. And again, we just wanna make sure that we don't get our wires twisted. So you can see we have our front, our front or our top wire, and then the middle wire. And then for these two, you can see they're kind of getting twisted. So if I bend them correct, now you can see it's more, okay, there they are, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's clear which 4 belong where. So then we're ready to close that frame. Actually, you know, I think what I'll do is I'll disinclude these 2 wires here at first and just get a few coils started with just these 2 wires, since that's what I did on the other side, on the front side. So I'll just carefully with my hands or with my fingers get a few of those coils. And I don't know if you're hearing those chime or jingles. There's a phone on this table on the other end of this quartz table that's going off. Somebody is super popular. That's okay. All right, so now that we've got a few coils, I'm just gonna use the pliers to kind of stamp that down so it's nice and flat. And then now we will be ready for these other 2 20 gauge wires to join the party. And then I'll do the same thing again, where first I'll get these loose wires out of the way, and then I'm gonna line up these 4 wires and then pinch down outwards here. And maybe I won't do that yet. Maybe I'm just gonna use my fingers because the wires are being a little stubborn, but I'm just gonna have to work around my entire hand. You see how I do that? And carefully coil these all 4 together, making sure that everyone stays in their place, right? The far left, the middle right, and the far right. They're all lined up and they're not getting crossed. All right, and then after I get a few coils down, then I'll be ready to get the pliers involved. I just find the pliers and the grip of the pliers to be really easy to work with, so that's my preference. If you find that it's more comfortable for you to work with your hands, that's totally okay. There's no one way. There's no one right way. This is art. And art is all about creativity and kind of finding your own way to create. So then we'll just do a few more coils, and then in a second I'm gonna grab the stone and bring it back into place just to check out the progress of the pendant in total. All right. So that looks good. My frame does look a little low, but that's fine because it's still certainly higher than the base of the stone, and that's what's most important. And I will say on both sides, I could probably coil quite a bit more. So that's what we'll do. But I also want to keep in mind that we want to keep that angle since it's not going directly across, straight across. Remember that there's this angle where this one is higher up than this one as well. This one is higher up than over here. So I want to maintain that angle by keeping this side coiled lower than this side, going up further and higher. So I think what I'll do is I'll start with the lower one first, and then when I figure out where I want to stop there, it will tell me, I'll have more clarity on how much to do on the other end. And by the way, guys, I don't know that I ever say this in my videos, but I do sell my wraps. You know, obviously all my videos are free. You know, I love teaching, and I actually, outside of the videos, I do teach workshops as well. But that's like a local thing where, you know, if you know, you know. If you're local to my area, I can teach you. I did consider doing some like individual, like maybe on like a FaceTime or something, doing like a class, like an individuals class or something. If you were interested in that, like I'm totally open to it, but I've never really explored that as an opportunity. I guess I'm just putting it out there now. If you guys think of that, that's a good idea. You'd be interested in that. I'm totally open to it. But yeah, I do workshops, and then I also, all my wraps, all my completed work, I sell at the markets as well. And every time people are like, oh, well, you got to get online. You got to sell them on Etsy. Do you have an Etsy? I mean, technically, yes, I have an Etsy, but not a lot of my stuff is really, I don't really focus on the online sales so much. And I think that I would like to get that to change. If you think that that's a good idea, please drop a comment and let me know. Give me some encouragement. Show your excitement about it, and that will get me excited about it, and that will be the motivation that I need to actually go out and do that, if that makes sense. I'm just kind of blabbing on and stalling as I continue to progress with these coils, because it's not a lot that I can tell you about this coil method. It's the same coil method that it's been since day one. But yeah. So that's some opportunities for me, and I guess I'm just asking for some feedback. What are your thoughts on that? Please let me know. And I do appreciate, I know that a few of you have been a little bit more active in the comments section, and I do appreciate that. That's, as an artist, that's really encouraging to know the impact that I'm creating, rather than that my videos are just done in vain. So I did check it out. If you saw that, I took a moment to study and see, okay, a little bit shorter, a little bit higher. I could go a little bit even more higher to match this angle here. That's the goal, is to get as close to this angle as possible. And we're about there. And we can also drop our stone in to see how high up on the stone that is. And it's looking pretty good. We are doing a good job. So just a few more coils. And careful not to allow our wires to get crossed. We want to make sure that they stay nice and flat. And maybe 1 and 2 more coils. And then we can check to see, that looks like about the angle that I want. So then we're gonna do that same thing where we split the 4 into 2, bending the 2 left ones outwards. And it will be the same for these 2, bending them outwards. And then we can put our stone in. We're ready to keep our stone in place. And then we're just gonna bring those 2 wires across the top. And look at that. Look at how they line up, these 2 and those 2. That angle looks pretty on point, so good job there. And then from here, we're gonna do bending that angle. What I did is with my thumb, I just kind of wedged it in there to allow the angle to get bent. And then we're gonna attach these 4. Careful not to get the those wires confused. We wanna make sure that they all stay. In fact, I'm gonna get my, my flat pliers involved. So now I have all 4 of those lined up perfectly as I want them to be. And then now I'm gonna use the pliers to keep them stuck like that as I carefully coil them into place. Once again, working all the way around my hand. And then I'll use my pliers to clamp down on that coiled portion. And look at that frame, it's looking real nice. And then we'll do the same. Actually, I want to double check and make sure it looks like it's a little wide for the stone, so I want to make sure that's good. Yeah, that looks good. Cool. So now we're gonna bring these guys across the backside. And the idea is that the 2 on the bottom are at the same angle as the 2 on the top, and that looks to be correct. So from here, I'll pinch down once again with my thumb, and then with my other hand, those 2 fingers are gonna do the bending to lock all 4 of these guys into place, making sure that they don't get crossed. And we're just gonna go ahead and grab the pliers to make sure that they don't get twisted, because they are really wanting to get twisted right now. Okay. So now we're just gonna do the same thing, working the wire all the way around the hand. Going very slow and very careful. Better to go slow and do it right, you know. Okay, now we've got a few coils and the frame looks good. None of those 20 gauge wires got twisted. And then I'm just gonna bend this a little bit outwards away from the stone. That way I could slip the pliers in there. Actually, they still don't quite fit, so I've got a few more coils to do, working around everything. Okay, so we'll take a look there. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, all those wires, and none of them got twisted, which is perfect. That's what we want. Now we can wedge the pliers in there and kind of stamp down on those coils to keep them nice and flat. And we can also use that grip to our advantage to get some more coils done at a faster rate. It also, you should notice the feel of it, that towards the end, the 4 wires are a little bit less stubborn about wanting to cross. Should be a lot easier to make sure that they don't get twisted in there. And then we can check and see we're pretty close to the top. We're almost done. And I'm gonna switch, but you don't have to switch at this point. What's important is that when you coil up, you coil to the point where they both meet at the top, and then you stop there. And I am a little bit concerned that I underestimated the amount of 20 gauge wire that I need to complete this, thus breaking my own #1 rule of overestimating the amount of wire, which every now and then it happens. And when it happens, we just accept that and take it as a learning experience. But all in all, I mean, especially since this, the big intention behind this wrap is the tutorial. And I feel like I did a pretty good job of covering this method, regardless of whether or not I'll be able to finish this wrap. So I'm okay with that. I'll slip the pliers in there. Now that I have a good grip in there and I can coil up a little bit faster, not needing to work around my hand. And I'll stop there on that side. Pretty close to the top. And then I'll complete more on the other side. Okay, so this is, and just so you know, this is not the first time with this style of wrap that I did underestimate the amount of wire. And if you notice that that continues to happen, learn from it. Learn that it's better to, if you thought you overestimated, overestimate. Do it even more so, because you don't want to run out of wire, especially when you're almost at the end. And we'll see what I can do. Okay, so these two are close enough to the top here that I'm just gonna, with this, I look at these four top wires, right? And I see clearly these two are the longest ones. So that tells me, especially since I'm running out of wire to work with, that those two will have to be the two for the loop that the lace goes through. So what I'll do is on the other end, you can see I already split these two. And what they're gonna do is come around and put the long two are gonna come in between it. And then have first things first, I wanna make sure that I get that loop done. So what I'll do is pinch, make sure that they're flat and parallel still, right? And then pinch down about halfway on my pliers and just curl a loop like that. And it's a pretty small loop, a lot smaller than I normally do. And then I noticed that the other two So these two are the loops, right? And then the other two of that 4 are kind of getting in my way at this point. So I'm just gonna pick on them and bend them straight outwards like that, giving me more space to work with to complete the roller coaster loop to loop. And then I'll put my pliers back in there. And make sure that that loop goes completely around the outside of these other 2 wires. So they lay, the loop-to-loop wires will lay on top of those other wires. And that's quite a bit of a struggle. I don't think I'll be able to complete this piece, unfortunately. But basically to finish this off, I'll take all the rest of my remaining wires and just kind of twirl them around in such a way that it locks everything together. So you could imagine, it's kind of a heartbreak, guys, to be honest, but that's okay. Live and learn. I hope that you guys still got some learning experience out of this and that you are able to complete your wraps at home. You could see how cool this wrap would have been if I were able to complete it. But, you know, live and learn. Thank you.